Redditors with personality disorders, narcissists, sociopaths, psychopaths, etc. What are some of your success stories regarding relationships after being diagnosed? I have schizoid personality disorder. I'm 48. I've not dated since 1992. If she hadn't asked me, I probably never would have dated, but my curiosity got the best of me. I'm also chronically unemployed. I've never been able to keep a job, mostly because I don't build relationships with my coworkers. School was a disaster probably for the same reasons. I don't seem to be interested in things the way other people are, so I'm impossible to motivate. I was suffering for years with unknown mental health issues and had a string of awful abusive relationships. I finally got diagnosed, BPD, started getting help, and meet an amazing person who supports me, puts up with my sometimes over-the-top mood swings with kindness and love. Sometimes I worry I'm putting too much on him and tell him this often. He always bats it away, saying I'm worth it. To be clear, I don't abuse him or say horrible things to him. It's just my mood around him that can be toxic. If I get upset, I can't really stop the process and it can be very stressful. With me crying and unable to self-soothe, etc. I do my best to keep these things to a minimum. And am getting better the more time goes by, and even just blurting out how I feel and getting a hug off him helps so much, knowing I'm not being judged. Even if I'm acting like a child, I still have a long road ahead. And maybe one day he will realize it's too much for him, which I would totally understand. It's shown me what a person can be. And what everyone deserves, love and understanding, and I'll always be grateful to him for that. I'm not unlovable just because I'm sick. My late GF had BPD, and she had a very similar experience. An ex once told her she was a hard person to love, and it really fucked her up. When I eventually told her I loved her, I said it was the easiest thing I've ever done, and it was totally the truth. I hated to see her cry, but I'd just hold her and tell her how much she meant to me. It was hard for her to let herself be happy, thinking she never deserved it, or that happiness would be ripped away from her without her say. It led to some self-destructive traits which I'm thankful did not lead to her passing. I still love her despite everything. I wish I could have done more. I wish she had more time. Well, my father's a psychopath who once told me that psychopaths don't like being called that. He'd consider his greatest success that of being able to hold down a marriage with a kid, along with multiple girlfriends. That is very impressive, but not in a good way. Yeah, I mean, a relationship success story from a psychopath is really only going to be successful for one person involved. Schizoid personality here. What are these relationships you speak of? These relationships haven't changed. But knowing how other people think makes getting by easier. Knowing you're schizoid doesn't really help. In my experience, schizoids are pretty insular and self-reflective. So we know how we operate without a diagnosis. By schizoid standards, I've been very successful at dating. By normal person standards, I'm still well below average. But I find a diagnosis is very helpful for them. A few months in and they tend to have a lot of questions, but even just a Wikipedia entry on SPD helps a ton. I have been diagnosed with antisocial personality. Honestly, I hide it. No way anyone can look at you the same way if you confess. To say I've had a diagnosis or two, been through the ringer a bunch, and have had to deal with the repercussions of that would be an understatement. What I can say though, is when I finally addressed it to the people I trust and care about, it lifted a great weight. I guess my advice would be just own it. Don't sugarcoat. Joke about it. And overall, let loved ones know you recognize the behavior and move forward with the assumption that it was a learning experience and people progress. Often it makes you a much better person. I hope it's okay that I answer. I'm dating a woman with borderline personality disorder. I've known her for 8 years. I've been seeing her for a year and a half, and we've been officially dating for a year. It's hard, but it's the most rewarding relationship I've ever been in. I was hoping to find someone in thread with a dissociative disorder. I feel I go through episodes where I'm just so disconnected with everything to a disorienting degree. And I feel I just want to talk to someone. I just hearing others' experiences. I can gauge if I relate or not. Really nice to see this question. I've been with my boyfriend for 5+ years. And was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder about 2.5 years into our relationship. Before my diagnosis. Even though we got along amazingly, communicated well, and were generally happy, I would find myself throwing toddler-like tantrums at any perceived or imagined slight. I hated this about myself. I thought I was a bad person because I just couldn't control myself. My partner happens to be an amazing people reader. He seems to just naturally pick up on people's personality and intentions as easily as I notice hair color. He was nothing but understanding. Even though we had little knowledge of mental health, we both knew something was off. And he was a constant support as I sought out treatment. I was diagnosed with BPD and given a therapist who specialized in PTSD in veterans. It turns out my flare-ups were somehow similar to a PTSD flashback. I was taught a bunch of techniques to use when I felt myself starting to flare out. It was also the first time I realized that my parents had been incredibly emotionally negligent to the point where I hadn't actually learned to deal with emotions. What was accidentally taught instead was that if I am angry or sad, I am about to be yelled at. It's taken 3 years, but I've found the right combo of meds. I'm not cured. And I'm definitely not perfect. But I don't have flare-outs anymore. Sure, I sometimes raise my voice when I shouldn't. Or get into a stupid argument with my boyfriend, but I'm working on myself every day and we're super solid. And super in love. I'm actually typing this beside him aboard a ferry on our way to what will hopefully be our new life. In 3 hours I'll be doing the entrance exam for a college program that I'm really excited about. And afterwards we're checking out the shop he'll be managing in September. We have a cat and a dog together, we illustrated a book together, found a 20,000-year-old fossil together, and foraged together at least once a week. The op might be surprised to know that sociopath and psychopath do not exist in the DSM-V, the official manual of mental disorders. So one is not likely to be thusly diagnosed by a reputable mental health professional. There is antisocial personality disorder. But it doesn't quite mean the same thing. I have schizoid personality disorder and it's really not that interesting. I was also diagnosed with anxiety, depression, and schizophrenia, so those took priority. I didn't even realize I had it until I reread an old document years later. There's no real treatment for it, but finding out helped me understand myself better. Also, if you get a mental evaluation done you should really get a professional to interpret it. Edit. Forgot the question. I haven't had much success, but I haven't really tried either. After being diagnosed, I've accepted that someone would have to be damn near perfect for a relationship to feel worth it for me, and that person might not exist. I'm alright with that for now. I don't think you should rely on just finding someone perfect or something. Depends on how you feel about it. But I know some dudes who went through bad times while single, including me, and they used to say similar stuff about perfect matches or simply someone perfect. Well, that shit doesn't really exist, and if it did, life would be boring as fuck. Love is fucking built. Just like everything else. Also, from my experience, all the girls I thought were perfect for me were ages from that. I was caught in surprise when I realized that the girl I'm with now for 4 years was actually compatible as fuck. And dude, a lot of shit happened. To the point where you will always question yourself if you are with the right person. But truly, after it's built, you can even get stabbed. You will end up finding yourself in a perfect life with a perfect person. ADHD and medication has made a huge impact on my relationships. I was diagnosed in college since my dad did not believe in mental health disorders. I was ashamed of struggling with basic things everyone else seemed to do so naturally, like sit still during meetings at the ripe age of 21 or listen to and remember short instructions from 1 minute to the next. Even just processing was a nightmare. The baby in a pool in front of me flipped on a floaty boat and I stood there letting the baby struggle for a solid 5 seconds before a panicked mom next to him turned around and flipped him back and I managed to process. Oh. That baby was in trouble. I generally did okay in school, but teachers always had to give me an extra 5, 10, 30 min on test after everyone else had finished, even on exams that were easy to me. By college I no longer received extra time and my grades started sinking quick despite my best efforts. Taking meds felt like looking at everything with your first pair of glasses after years of foggy vision. I realized some people banked on my short memory to steal from me. People would ask to borrow something mid-conversation, wallet, iPod, my homework, my books, and just never give it back, or like with a wallet, try to return a different item. Because I could never remember what was mine in detail and I was ashamed to admit it. I just got used to things going missing. It was a hell of a wake-up call when certain friends were surprised I actually asked for my shit back, or when they handed me the wrong item and I corrected them. My family got angry multiple times when they said I had promised X and I pointed out it was actually is. I began to paper trail everything. I still live by my list and schedules. I was still a little late to everything. But my work became much better quality. I would remember what people said to me from 1 day ago, so I felt like I was actually getting to know people. Really know them. 1 day to the next. I started getting obsessed with people's stories and I made some close friends for the first time, and after the initial shock, I even got to know my family, as weird as that sounds. I made huge strides in my career and my ADHD suddenly became a superpower. I could take random thought into creative solutions. My hyperactiveness became initiative and enthusiasm. My paper trail has covered my ass more times than I can count, and I've been known as one of the most reliable people in my circle, if you can forgive the 10 to 15 minutes late I arrive. No antisocial disorder but a very antisocial person. I'm a diagnosed autist with chronic depression due childhood abuse. Where to start? I have this intense need to be alone. Yet I hate to be lonely. I want to have friends yet I hate any form of socializing. I feel like an empty shell. I combine different pieces of behavior and information to form some sense of me. I feel a different person depending whom I interact with. Like some B-movie actor. So I hide. Hide everything that might make me different. Sometimes I fail. The mask cracks. When that happens I avoid or ghost those people. I have no social instinct. Everything needs to be done consciously. I understand that's my burden. The worst part is the loneliness. No matter how loving and understanding my friends, family and partner are, there's a lingering loneliness I can never shake off. I know they love me and I try to too. But the majority of the time it just doesn't seem to reach me. No sense of guilt to be found either. It's so hard to explain. I see it as most people's emotions. Dreams. Souls. Whatever makes them are floating in huge strings of soapballs on the wind of life. You know those kind kids blow. When meeting others. The balls bounce against each other and when they become friends the soapballs stick. And sometimes, when we truly love each other, our soapballs merge together into a bigger one. Now I'm not in a ball of soap. I'm in a hard plastic ball. But I can see and understand them. I can see their dreams. Their beings. They're sticking to me, yet they'll never merge with me. Is that still true understanding though? Something somewhere is disconnected, yet I can see the green grass on the other side never to be reached. Despite the fucked up mess I am. I found an equally messed up person. She suffered from beatings and mental abuse herself. We have great comfort and understanding in each other through trauma. She's my people's shield since just existing on this earth for 5 hours drains all my energy to live there. I know it's very hard on her. One day I'm king of the world. The other a paranoid maniac. But being with her I finally understand what happiness can be. I just wish I had some turn off button anyone can flick when I feel an episode coming up. Borderline personality disorder here also known as she's a psycho bitch, stay away from her in common media. I started my current relationship before I'd been diagnosed. I had cheated on my previous 2 boyfriends. And gotten together with the guy I cheated with. He got me to realize that my brain wasn't doing normal things. Turns out sabotaging your own life and having panic attacks at the thought of people canceling plans isn't a normal person thing to do. So I went to the doctor. And got diagnosed with BPD. I'd already gotten a diagnosis of depression, generalized anxiety disorder and social anxiety disorder in the past. And was struggling with them at the same time. Getting diagnosed made everything easier. Suddenly I knew why I panicked every time people cancelled plans. Why my emotions seemed to never match the situation. And why they were so strong. Why I decided to sabotage every relationship I had by cheating. And knowing the reason behind the actions meant that I could get better and work to control my brain instead of it controlling me. He helped me work on my issues. And stuck by me. Helped me move out of my parents' place. Which meant getting away from the abuse that had caused all of my mental health problems in the first place. Turns out that getting away from the source of the issues really helps with recovery. Haha. We're still together 5.5 years later and looking to buy a house together soon. We own cats. And have talked about and ultimately decided to wait another 5-ish years, starting a human family.